Hi everyone, Miss Moxley here. So you have your Moon Module exam tomorrow, and I wanted to go ahead and review with you guys today for your Moon Module exam. Now, if you'll notice on your agenda, today you have opaques material and shadows lesson and quiz, and then tomorrow you have the Moon Module exam. Be sure that you go home and study for the Moon Module exam. Oh, and that should say Moon, not Mood. I'll go in and change that. The Moon Module exam. Be sure to go home and study for that. Make sure that you're reviewing your quizzes from this module and your notes. Now, Wednesday, the 21st, will not have a live session. But I do want you guys to go in. I'm making this a makeup day. So that doesn't mean you don't have any work, because I've gone through and looked at the grades, and everyone has at least one temporary zero of some sorts, meaning you have a late and missing assignment. You need to go in, look at your grades or look at your grade book, and complete any items that have zeros on Wednesday, okay? I'm doing this because I want you guys to bring your grades up. Now, as far as weights go, if there's a test, an exam that has a zero, that exam weighs more than any of the quizzes or the other assignments. So be sure to get those tests done first, but be sure that you're prepared for them. All right, so the Moon Module exam review. I've got some questions and some answers here. Let me get my pen so we can mark it up. And we're going to go through and I'm going to mark it up because I know it's kind of tight together. First question asked. Newton's law of gravity says that any effect of gravity between two objects depends on what two factors? Is it distance and mass, intendance and capacitance, newtons and kilograms, or joules and kelvins? Newton's law of gravity says that any effect of gravity between two objects depends on what two factors? All right, and the correct answer is distance and mass. Okay, we're talking about distance and mass. Next question that I have for you here, Sir Isaac Newton's Principia Mathematica is considered of what significance? Is it the greatest single contribution to the history of science, a brilliant work of the principles of calculus, a stepping stone to becoming a brilliant politician and a member of parliament, or a finest mathematics textbooks for the 17th century? So this one is the greatest single contribution to the history of science. All right, let me talk about this one a little bit. Oops, I'm sorry guys. Didn't mean to do that. So in his Principia, he lays out his laws of motion and his laws of gravity at a time when no one had any idea of the nature of these subjects. So included in his achievements were the discovery by using a prism that white light was actually made up of refracted colors, and the invention of the first practical reflecting telescope, which are now used almost exclusively by astronomers. All right, let's move on to our next question. Choose the statement that best describes the moon's landing sparse vegetation, very little erosion, and sandy soil. All right, is it, and let me go in and mark this, almost flat and featureless with some rolling hills? Oh, I'm sorry, I read one of the answer options as the question. Choose the statement that best describes the moon's landscape. Sparse vegetation, very little erosion, and sandy soil. Then you have almost flat and featureless with some rolling hills. Then you have riverbeds with boulders, dust storms, and bad weather. And then you have powdery soil, craters, mountains, and valleys. So which one best describes the moon's landscape? All right, and the correct answer is this last one here. Powdery soil, craters, mountains, and valleys. All right, be sure that you understand or know what the moon's landscape characteristics are. Next question, compare the far side and the visible side of the moon. So compare both sides, far side and visible. We have about 30% of the visible side of the moon is Maria, and the far side is 1% Maria and mostly cratered. The visible side has been struck by giant asteroids, creating massive Maria. The far side of the moon has been struck by comets and asteroids, but the visible side is protected by its synchronous orbit with Earth. Or the visible, why is it doing that? Sorry, guys. The visible side of the moon has more craters and Maria than the far side. Sorry. All right, so if you're looking at these options, it's this first one here. My mouse is sticking. Goodness. About 30% of the visible side of the moon is Maria, and the far side is 1% Maria and mostly cratered. Next question, what best describes the reason why neap tides occur? When the sun and moon are at right angles, the combined gravity is weaker, producing most tides. Neap tides occur during the change of tide when there is no movement of water. Neap tides occur when the angle between the Earth and Sun is 90 degrees, offsetting the attraction of the moon. Neap tides occur in the fall and winter months when the sun and moon align obliquely to each other. All right. So this answer is when the sun and moon are at right angles, the combined gravity is weaker, producing modest tides. So, all right, let's talk about neap tides a little bit because we've not reviewed that much. So let's talk about neap tides. So neap tides occur during the first quarter and third quarter phases when the sun and moon align at right angles to each other. Sun and moon have to be at right angles to each other. And it has to be during the first quarter and the third quarter phases. Gravitational force of the sun and moon pulling in two different directions during these phases causes these tides. So conditions have to be perfect. You have to have those 90-degree angles, and it has to be during the first quarter and third quarter phases where the sun and moon align. All right, next question. Why is there a delay for the tides to react to the moon's and sun's gravitational effect? Why is there a delay for the tides to react to the moon's and sun's gravitational effect? Got to a 50-50 here. The gravitational forces must overcome inertia and friction for the tides to take effect on water. Water is relatively immune to the force of gravity, delaying the tidal processes. All right, the correct option is the gravitational forces must overcome inertia and friction for the tides to take effect on water. All right, next question. What is the correct order for the 8 phases of the moon? In other words, be sure that you know the correct order of the 8 phases of the moon. And they are in the correct order. This is already in the correct order. New moon, waning crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous, full moon, waning gibbous, third quarter, and waxing crescent. So be sure that you know the 8 phases of the moon in order. All right, our next question. Why must the moon travel more than a full orbit around the Earth for the full moon to be complete? The Earth blocks the sunlight of the sun on forcing the moon to move past one orbit to appear full. Earth is orbiting the sun, changing the angle and making the moon move a little past one orbit. So you have a 50-50 here. And the correct answer is this last one. Oh, my mouse is sticking again. Earth is orbiting the sun, changing the angle and making the moon move a little past one orbit. So the question again asked, why must the moon travel more than a full orbit around the Earth for the full moon to be complete? And the answer is, Earth is orbiting the sun, changing the angle and making the moon move a little past one orbit. So our next question, what is a characteristic of an opaque object? And I realize that you guys are working on this today. Your options are allows no light to pass or allows blurred light to pass. An opaque object. So an opaque object is not going to allow any light to pass. It allows no light to pass. So you just need to make sure that you have a good definition and a good example in your notes in terms of studying for opaque materials and shadows in terms of this test. All right, next question. Choose the best description of an antumbra. And we've got when an opaque object that isn't large enough to cover a bright object and a ring around the moon caused by humidity. All right, and it's this first one here. When an opaque object that isn't large enough to cover a bright object, you have an antumbra. So you have that little bitty dark spot. What is the relative placement of the moon, Earth, and sun during a solar eclipse? Be sure that you understand the correct placement of the moon, Earth, and sun. You should know this for a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse. All right. So the correct answer, and I'm not giving you much option here, I've just got the answer up. It's the sun, Earth, and moon are aligned with the moon in the middle and the Earth farthest away from the sun. So the moon is in the middle and the Earth is on the other side of the moon. It's the farthest object out of these three away from the sun. So you have sun, moon, and Earth. All right, next question and the final question. What conditions are necessary for a total lunar eclipse? All right, and again, I've just got it laid out here for you guys. You have to have a full moon. The full moon has to be in the full moon phase. 3 bodies have to be in alignment, and the Earth between the sun and the moon. All right, so I do want to point out with this one, we're talking about a total lunar eclipse versus a solar eclipse. So a solar eclipse, the moon is in the middle. And a lunar eclipse, we have the Earth in the middle. Solar, moon in the middle, lunar, Earth in the middle. All right, guys, that is it for today. If you have any questions, of course, don't hesitate to reach out. If you need help, of course, let me know. I'll be glad to see what I can do for you guys. We will not meet again on Wednesday, but you will have the opportunity to make up any missing or late work. Everybody has something they need to be doing, so there should be no idle hands. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you after Thanksgiving break.